name is Sebastian, and in this video I want to show you why I'm using a tiling window manager. Because over the years I got a lot of comments on my videos and in my presentations why my setup looks so weird and what this type of window manager is that I'm using. So you probably know that I'm on Linux, and I especially use one distribution called Arch Linux, but that's for sort of historical reasons. And what I'm using is this i3 window manager. So i3 is a so-called tiling window manager, which means that your windows are or can be arranged as tiles, but well, they don't have to be. Actually, mostly they are arranged in these sort of tab modes, what I'm using here. So in the top you see very tiny tabs here for which you can 1, 2, 3 just arrange your windows accordingly. And the reason why I'm doing this is mainly because of the keyboard concept. So how you arrange these windows is almost exclusively via keyboard. As a sort of side effect, you could still use your mouse and change the windows accordingly, but not all of the features are available by mouse, and it's actually much easier to just use the keyboard there. So that's one thing, you can fully use all of the setup just by keyboard. So that's really helpful. This, you could argue, is possible with all window managers, also whether you're on Linux or on Mac, but the movement here works really well and is well thought out. So basically how all of the commands work in i3 is that you use the super key or Windows key, like that key in the middle here, what you see, and then with some combination. The combinations out of the box use a Vim-like binding, which works really nice if if you're used to this Vim movement. So, you know, H and L for left and right. You could arrange it differently for up and down. Usually I arrange them sort of side by side with left and right. If I have control and then super left, right, I switch the work spaces. So that's typically what I'm doing, and that's what I'm doing like at all. That's almost the total of what I use here. I will talk about monitors in a second, but that's already that. And then, of course, you could arrange something in tiles that I say, okay, I can press a key, for example, Control Alt, and then arrange it in this way, or with Shift to move them back, sort of like to drag and drop with your keyboard. That's a Control Alt L in this case to then sort of drag this window to them next side by side. So you switch the mode to the, in this case, that's a horizontal or vertical split, that you have this horizontally side by side. And then what you can do, well, you can actually read here, for example, and type there. So then you have your editor here at this side to take notes. So of course you could also arrange this with other window managers, or what is sometimes called a floating mode, by just these floating windows that you have in the Windows operating system typically. But I think once you're used to the keyboard setup, then this is just faster. If now you want to change the arrangement, of course you can say, okay, I want to make this bigger, smaller, whatever. And typically that's just really all I need. So for example, if I want to have a website here and take some notes, I do this in this way. I can read over there and then arrange it, make it bigger again, or make it full screen with all of these functionalities available. So that's typically what I do. I sometimes have it side by side that I have my terminal set up, because I use the terminal a lot. So for example, if I say in this application, I can say that's my Quarkus Hello World application. For example, what I do very often, that I have an enterprise system running here, I do a split layout for where I then say, for example, curl localhost, just access this application and do it here. I see it side by side. I can open up another one down there. Sometimes I do this in order to track something. So for example, I say, okay, now please make sure that I don't know, see the running Docker containers, for example, or I say have this in a watch way. That you say, okay, every 1 second execute this, that I see the changes in my containers, and I keep working here and I just have an eye on them. So this is really helpful for the setup. And this is basically what I'm doing all the time. Why? Because it works really well with the keyboard concept. Also, what I like about the keyboard concept here is that it uses this key with Windows, and this is exclusively used for the setup. So I don't have any other collisions with other programs. So there is no other combination that I'm using, such as Alt plus something, which might collide then with your IDE or with something else. I had this a lot with other setups or other Linux distributions, such as GNOME, that then, you know, it collides with your IDE keys and you have to reassign them and things like that. Here, I don't have that at all. It's just a super key plus some combination, and then you're good. This is also the case for automating something. For example, if you want to say, well, I would like to start up some program. So I have my setup shared here on my .files directory. I can show you this, where this is located, .files, and then I have my i3 setup that is in config. So it looks like follows. Looks a little bit weird in the beginning, but it basically has the key binding here that maps all sorts of stuff. So I have the terminal, usually with return, or then with some sort of combination of these keys, where I then automatically can split the layout and open up a terminal. Why? Because I'm using the terminal so much that this is actually, I'm using this all the time, or I even already start up a Vim in a new terminal, because I use Vim a lot for just taking notes and things like that. So that's really helpful. Or of course, then just starting up some sort of other program and say, okay, you know, fire up your browser and things like that. Of course, in this case, I use the super key and Alt and then plus 1, 2, 3 and so on and so forth. Or you could assign any key, you know, you're totally free because your super key doesn't collide with anything else, and then just start up all of these things. So that's really, really helpful. Same for, you know, controlling audio. I have a nice feature to move the mouse out of the way. So for example, if it annoys you here and you cannot read, then I press this key and then it pushes it to the down right. So, you know, you don't even have to change your hand position. So the idea is really that you can stay on the keyboard all the time. And I think this is just really helpful. I mean, it takes some time to get used to it, but, you know, in this case, you can check this out. That just works really well. So the point is, I use the keyboard concept always with the super key. It doesn't collide with anything else, and you can assign almost an arbitrary amount or number of combinations and of shortcuts, because you can use this then to start up some programs. And this is pretty much easily editable. You can just, you know, you edit this config file, you restart it real quick and with one keystroke actually, and then you're good to go. Now for setups for monitors, this is also interesting because I don't have a lot of monitors. Well, fair enough, I have two in front of me because I use my video setup, that's a different computer. But for my working computer, I always use a single monitor. Why? Well, first of all, you might argue about, you know, screen real estate and things like that, but I think this is limited very quickly. So I'm not a big fan of these super huge screens. Why? Because, well, your human field of view is quite limited, or at least the field of what you're focusing on right now. You know, you can see a lot in the room if you just have it, you know, you accept the blurry movements or something like that. But if you say, I'm looking at this right now, then your field of view is actually very limited. It's much smaller than most screens, modern screens really. So what I'm having in front of me, I'm recording this with full HD, but my screen, that's a 27 inch, that is this not 4K, but like the 1440 or something like this, like the resolution in between, which works really well for me. So I can fit a whole full HD window, but then also another, you know, side node, a little bit more space, which I like sometimes for just having this sort of almost full screen and then some nodes like with Vim on the side. And that's it. And I rather focus on being quickly able to switch from one workspace to another, or to arrange the layout with, you know, hitting these keystrokes, rather than saying I need a huge screen real estate to arrange stuff, because it is actually less efficient. You will spend more time, you know, juggling around your windows there, rather than to actually focus on what you need to see. If you need to see something else, you quickly switch it with one keystroke and you're back. So I would rather invest the time to learn this and, you know, to get efficient on your keyboard usage, rather than to invest in a lot of screen real estate. So that's what I'm doing. I'm using a single monitor. It's also always easier to set up. You know, even of course, with Linux, you can have multiple monitors, and it's also compatible with i3. There's another shortcut that I almost never used for switching to a monitor, and then, you switch the current focused window, but I just actually don't need it. So I'm very happy with this setup. That's what I'm doing. And this is a very simple, straightforward setup for me, but with the keyboard layout, it works really well. And that's the reason why I use i3 and this tiling window manager. I also notice when I have to use a different setup with a client or where I use a friend's computer, that I'm just much more effective on this, that it's actually with the default, let's say Windows key bindings with Alt-Tab and what you typically use, it's just much slower to browse around these floating windows rather than to say what is the sort of ideal setup that I want in this tiling fashion. You can change and rearrange and change sizes, and then just go with that and invest the time to be able to switch quicker. So that's the reason why I'm using a tiling window manager. Let me know in the comments down below if you tried a similar setup, or if you use Linux with some other non-default window manager there as well. And if you like the topic of productivity, so you can check out the dot files that I have. You can have a look at my setup that's on GitHub, or check out a video course that I have on developer productivity. And that being said, I hope this was helpful and maybe interesting to watch, and thanks for watching.